You are now listening to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. We preserve the history and sport of hunting through curious conversation and action-packed hunts, as well as offering you tips and strategy for more successful hunts. The Hunter's Advantage podcast is powered by Out on a Limb Manufacturing. Out on a Limb is a family-owned company based right here in Oklahoma that makes tree stands, saddle platforms, climbing sticks, and so much more.
Christian, I have a quick question.
What's that?
What bites down harder, a hippo or an alligator?
No idea.
It's a trick question. The Ridge Runner 2.0 bites harder than both of them. But all jokes aside, we use these products all across the land on public or private. These help us get into any tree we want and hunt where the deer actually are.
Most men go to the grocery store for their meat, but these products help you go to God's grocery store. I have used the Out on a Limb Ridge Runner 2.0 and the Shakar sticks for the last few years hunting public land bucks, and I've actually shot several bucks out of this setup. If you want to support the podcast and get some Out on a Limb equipment, make sure to go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 for 10% off at checkout. Once again, if you want to support the podcast, go to outonalimbmfg.com and use code HNTA10 at checkout for 10% off. Now let's get back to the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. We are currently joined by a couple gooners. We got Jake Gaylord, who looks like a pumpkin, and Prison Pate. How are you guys doing?
Get in the mood for fall.
Captain Carol, baby.
I did walk in Jake's house the other day, and it's fall, y'all, in the Gaylord household. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, dude. Those
R.I.P.
live, love,
Summer
laughs,
2023.
they're all over the place. Abby took those deer mounts down and live, love, laugh, and
spooky season.
Yeah,
We may be goons, but we shoot boons. Hey!
You guys might. I don't.
Oh yeah, I didn't shoot anything last year. For anyone wondering.
So we're currently in episode 4 of our How to Hunt Public Land Bucks series. Last week we talked about hang and hunt, some stories that we had about hang and hunting, and some of the kind of considerations and way we think about hunting spots. But this week we're going to be doing something that we don't have as much experience with, just a little, but we're going to be talking about ground hunting.
How's that different from tree hunting?
Typically, on tree hunting, you get in a tree, and then ground hunting, you're on the ground. Does that make sense?
So in the tree, you hunt. On the ground, you sleep because you have no chance.
Carol, you ground hunt all the time.
It is what it is.
Oh my gosh. So this might be a little bit of a shorter episode, just full transparency, because we haven't hunted a ton on the ground, but I'm trying to go back and think, public or private, doesn't matter for this specific question. When's the first time you guys ever hunted on the ground? It could be in a blind, I guess, but answer that question.
I know. I shot my very first buck hunting on the ground. I was in a lawn chair.
So you're experienced.
Yeah. I grew up ground hunting. Some could say. Yeah. We were hunting a fence line, an overgrown fence line in the middle of the property. Just stupid random fence. Don't even know why it was there, serving no purpose. But my dad was sitting in a tripod, and then I was on the ground sleeping in a lawn chair. And it was during youth rifle season, I believe. And unfortunately, a big old 11-pointer came strolling out. And
he's right behind you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he is actually. Big old 11-point. And shot him in the face. That was it.
Carol?
I've really only ground hunted with the bow twice that I can recall. And then rifle hunting, we pitched up a blind. I actually shot a decent deer, shot him the front shoulder. It broke both of his front shoulders. And we never found him. He ran through a creek. So
what's decent?
If I remember correctly, it's probably like 120 inches. But
where was that?
I was down at my grandpa's. That was a long time ago. It's like a 250, 300 yard shot.
Was he 5.5?
No.
Damn. What are you doing?
He was a buck that walked by. This was so long ago. So, but with the bow, not very many times.
Do you guys want to change that? Do you have any like aspirations or desire to hunt more on the ground
So if it
besides
has,
sleeping at the bottom of the tree, Carol?
oh, then
Hey,
no.
Christian, there's a video of you sleeping at the bottom of a tree.
Yeah, because I'd already killed like 8 deer that set. I'm just kidding.
Poacher? What?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yes and no. On public, no, because it only, where we typically hunt, there's gonna be a tree, and I did it one time on public. Because I think Dave had my saddle or my platform. I
Yeah,
think
I had your
at the time.
platform. That's what it was.
And so I hunted twice on the ground, and it didn't feel right. But on the lease, at the same time, I know on the lease to access, and hunt on our north side, we might not have a tree. So if the conditions are right, the wind is right, and we have, deer coming in to play it that way, yes, I would sit on the ground to get the job done. But it is very, very preferred not to.
Christy?
After listening to the deer science episode, or I guess recording it with Matt Ross and understanding the real like kind of intricacies of a deer's vision, I really don't see a reason you can't hunt on the ground like fairly consistently if you want to. Like the way deer see in 2060 vision, it's pretty blurry. They do see in slow motion, so they're good at capturing motion. But you can kill like I think you can kill deer on the ground. I think we give them way too much credit with their eyes.
Well, what was your first experience with hunting on the ground?
I'm trying to think. Dude, probably similar to you guys. We used to post up like bottom of the trees all the time. Like, would just when I started hunting Dustin in the
Rifles.
place, yeah, with rifles, dude, we would go sit on pond dams all the time and just hunt that way. And I've shot deer that way with a rifle, no problem. It's a little bit different when you're just kind of sitting on your butt, posted up with a gun with some sticks. Like you're really not giving them a chance. My first buck I ever shot was on the ground. Actually, the 10 point I shot off Dustin's, we walked up on over the edge of a hill and I posted up my gun against a tree and shot that buck 250 yards away.
So you
So
spawn stocked it.
some would say my first buck was spot and stock.
Ooh.
So I've had this in me since 2005, I'd say. Just a passion for ground hunting.
Yeah.
No, that's how I got started with that. I mean, it's not, I feel like the blind aspect of it is a lot more popular than people just kind of posting up in the ground hunting with a bow. I do feel like the last few years, especially since watching some of the hunting publics videos, I'm like, oh my gosh, people are killing good deer on the ground, like just walking around that way.
Well, man, I think the biggest like push for me would be just the comfortability of hunting on the ground. And I mean push in a bad way. Like I just, especially on public land, I don't feel confident, and especially if you have just a bow in your hand, it's like, man, it's already hard enough when you're 15 feet up there to, get the opportunity to draw back, quick enough to not, let them know what's going on. And so on the ground before the deer science month, obviously, it's like I feel like I'm shooting myself in the foot. You know what I mean? Like I'm just hurting myself that much more if I'm not up 15, 20 feet up in a tree.
I think the biggest driver for me is not so much of if I have a deer, I'm going to be super still, do everything slow motion, do what I need to do. It's not so much of the deer seeing me. I'm more worried of me seeing the deer on the ground because your vision
That's good.
is so much worse. I don't care what anybody says on the ground. You're up in a tree, and as long as you don't have tree limbs or anything, you're seeing hundreds of yards on the ground. Confirmed. Hey, I got a deer coming. Especially where we hunt, you can see them, but on the ground, you don't. You're like, oh, he's here, he's here, he's here. Like I got to get ready. But in a tree stand or in a saddle, you're like, okay, deer. I'm going to start getting stuff ready. I'll check to see if it's a buck or what it is, but I'm going to get ready. On the ground, I don't think you have that. It's more of a timing and my eyesight than theirs that I'm worried about.
Well, I think it's different. Like it's different how you do it, because if it's like a setup, like semi-permanent stand, let's say, where you pop up a blind or something on private, like that aspect of hunting on the ground, like obviously that's like I'm comfortable with that. That's secure. And in all honesty, I kind of like hunting out of a blind, I would think, more than in a stand, at least for private, just because of you can call me a sissy, but if it's like super windy and super cold, like you don't have to wear that many layers if you're in a blind, because I mean you're kind of out of the elements at that point. And also, if it's like 20, 30 yards or in, like it's pretty personal. Your eye level with the deer, and it's like it's just a whole different aspect of the hunting out of the ground. Now, in a blind, you have a little bit more wiggle room to be able to move around and draw back and stuff. But if you're just going in where you don't really have a blind, or you can't really brush yourself in, or sit behind something, it's a little different. Because I remember in what would that been? That would have been 2021, where I have a ladder stand now because I cleared out some trees. I couldn't find a good tree to hang on, and this is before a saddle. I went in because I knew I've seen this nice 10 point a few times before, and every single day we had this one fence it's like in the middle of this tree line, but it's not like a very good fence. And so this deer and a group of doe would walk the same path every single day. And so what I decided to do is move to where he was walking to. And since I couldn't find a good tree or anything, I just sat on a log with my left shoulder around this like little bitty tree. Like it wasn't super little, but it was probably, I don't know, 8 inches in diameter, maybe. And that was it, because there wasn't like any huge like monarch trees there, because it was so thick. Like the understory just filled with those little bitty saplings. And so that's what I used. And I had I seen that group of deer work towards me, but they ended up seeing something out in the field. I don't know what it was. And they kind of trotted off away from me. And as I was grunting at it, another deer came in from behind me and got within like 15 yards. And I didn't have any room to finagle or anything like that. And I think if you sit up on the ground, you have to have I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you sit on the ground, you have to have you got to make sure everything's planned out and where you want it to most of the time, or else something could happen like that, where a deer comes from where you're not expecting it, and then you're just kind of caught with your pecker in your hand.
Well, I don't think timber in timber situations, hunting on the ground is a super good idea for most situations. Like you don't
Right.
have a lot of especially in sparse timber where you got a tree and then 3 feet later there's a tree and then 10 foot later there's a tree. There's really nothing to break up your outline. You kind of look like tree cancer, like that big bump in the sniper community. That's how they find a bunch of people, because they lay next to trees and it looks like tree cancer, just a big bump on the end of a tree. And I've seen that in a lot of timber scenarios, or like where we hunt in the mountains. I would not feel super comfortable on the ground. Like you're saying, Pate, visibility is kind of an issue. I feel like it's hard to get a good hide. But when you're hunting somewhere that's maybe ag or more grass or edge habitat, I feel like it'd be so easy to tuck into an edge and hunt that way. I haven't done a ton of that, but what I was thinking about is, I guess people that turkey hunt a lot might be more apt to sit on the ground, because of when you're turkey hunting and kind of run and gunning, you're like moving to a spot and you hear a gobble and you sit down and you hunt. And then you hear a gobble and you go another 150 yards and you sit down and you hunt. And you're used to kind of sitting on the ground looking for places that kind of break up your outline, because turkeys have impeccable eyes. They see in full color. They have really good eyesight. They pick you off. Movement is insane. I've noticed that with people that like to kind of run and gun turkey hunt, it seems like they hunt on the ground a lot more, in my opinion. A good example is Jake Ayers. That dude does not mind hunting on the ground. Like half the time, he never even takes a tree stand.
I think it's not that he's good at finding places to blend in. I think that the animal does what we three, all of us do. And when you see him, you're like, damn, that is a beautiful man. And then they just take a few seconds to admire. And then at that time,
then they get shot.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I mean, I think about it like a good amount. Like the places we have hunted have not been super, I think, advantageous to hunt on the ground. And if you're going to hunt private, there's not really a reason to do it. Are there any situations where you guys would want to try ground hunting? Like no blind, no nothing.
Blowing Peyton's Kansas buck from that lake spot. That was a comfortability thing. That wasn't an issue with like it wouldn't have been a good on the ground spot like it would have been. So the way this sets up is there's this big old lake and it kind of oxbows in the lake and there's like a big old patch of timber. And we scouted this before the season and we're like, if a deer's anywhere around here, it's going to be in this little oxbow right here.
Great little isolated bedding area.
Oh, beautiful. And so we set up on the corner, just there's a little sliver on the edge of this bean field where we thought they would travel to get to this next strip of timber. And that's exactly where we set up. Or yeah, where we were planning on setting up. Well, I went in because Carol wasn't down there yet. And I hunted this spot because this was the area we were going to. We were working with one vehicle, I believe. And so wherever you went, I had to go, vice versa. And so I sat here and I was still new to the saddle. But in this spot, there wasn't good trees to like set, 8 to 15 feet up in a tree. It was
They were super spindly.
Well, there was that, and it had so many like low hanging branches, and so the highest you could get was probably like 4 feet up in there, and then at that point you're just like not doing yourself any favor. And so what I did, being new to the saddle, is I hung at like I was in the tree, but I was basically sitting on the ground, and I just used my saddle as a seat. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And that was about it. And now I was stupid. I was probably a little bit too high, but I mean, I think it would have worked if I would have just been comfortable enough and confident to not have to sit in a tree, if that makes sense.
Because you played the kind of half in, half out game. No benefit of being up in the tree, but no benefit of being on the ground.
Exactly. It's like when you're like hunting a ridge and you try to hunt in the middle of the ridge, you're not going to get a great shot on either side. Now you're going to get 2 iffy shots if you're able to shoot across. It's like one of those scenarios. And so, yeah, that's just what I did. And I picked the worst of both worlds, I should say, and ended up not working out. Deer came out exactly where we wanted it to. And I was just caught off guard and I got busted because I really didn't have any cover.
Do you think, I think you did answer this question, but do you think because we haven't hunted a ton on the ground, you didn't have the confidence to just sit on the ground?
That's the only thing was the confidence. Cause it's like, man, I feel, because it almost felt so foreign, because usually when I have a bow in my hand and I'm trying to kill a deer, it's like I've always been in a tree or like a blind where I knew I could get away with like a little bit of movement. But here, like I was so stupid about, man, am I going to be an idiot for like trying to sit on the ground? Cause like to be honest, I've never really considered that before, like on a spot that I didn't know what was going to happen, or like where the deer are going to come out from. I was like, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, because that's another thing. What Carol touched on a second ago is like the visibility aspect of it. It's like, I don't want a deer to walk up on me. I just didn't hunting public enough, like as much public as we've hunted. And especially having that little issue about, where we hunt in Oklahoma, where the deer density is low. I don't want to miss an opportunity, because usually if you miss one good opportunity, you're not going to have another one. And Kansas, that might have been different, or it might have been the same. But that was my mindset going in, where I didn't want to, if a deer came in, I didn't want to blow the opportunity. And so my thinking is I would see them beforehand and then situate myself after I seen them. That's kind of my thought process.
I think of the ground aspect as like just another tool, because I don't think in most scenarios it should be your A plan. Like, why would it be? If you have have a climber or hang on or a saddle and you can get above the deer, absolutely. That's one of the only ways you can mitigate their vision at all. So you might as well. But in that situation and in other situations, I think there's certain scenarios where it is the only option. And if you're not able to do it then like you said, I think it can bite you in the cheeks hard.
Well, I thought you were going to transition into your Kansas buck where it was your only option.
Well, yeah, there's that. That's a good story for that example. So when we were hunting Kansas, we hunted a week in Oklahoma, and then we went up to Kansas this last season, and kind of got frustrated with the hunting pressure in the areas that we were hunting. So I decided me and Jake both decided to drive around. I think Carol was actually hunting that day, but we decided to drive around and just look for deer because it was like, I want to see deer. I want to get confirmation that there's deer around before I put up shop somewhere. So I drove by this Milo field on private land, and there were probably 30 or 40 deer in this spot. And one of them was like 160 incher, just a freaking giant.
Whatever.
And
you're seeing things.
Maybe I was after that 2 weeks of delusion. but anyways, that buck he was out there and he was big. I'll just say he's at least a Pope and young. But he ran off, and there was a cattle pasture that was public, and it was just right next to this Milo. And I decided, okay, I'm going to go try to get in here and call to these deer as they kind of come back and walk back to bedding to this fence line. And
that's going to tickle some fancies. An out-of-stater hunting the fence on private.
I didn't say I was hunting the fence. I said when they came by the fence line. I wasn't on the fence. I was 30 yards off of it.
Okay.
That's fair. That is so fair game. I don't care what people say about that. Carol made a TikTok about fence lines. What do people say about it, Carol?
It was really 50-50. There's some people like, hey, if you're legal, you're legal. Some people are like, hey, that's pretty messed up, but you're legal. You were legal.
That's true.
I was legal. There were some people on Carol's TikTok that were like, my land. Nobody gonna tell me where I can hunt on my land. I'll hunt the tree next to the fence. And you're like, okay, dude.
You were also like some on of my neighbors. No. You're also on public land. Like,
yeah.
What are you gonna do? It's not my fault that the public was crap and there was no food on it. That's the state of Kansas's problem.
I've seen some of the neighboring people that the neighbor, the private I hunt. There's literally a tree that's like growing up into the fence, and they have a stand facing towards ours. So it's literally like over the fence facing ours. And it's like, where are you shooting, bud?
Your land.
Yes.
There are certain scenarios, dude, I don't give a frick. If there's a deer on private and I want to try to kill it and I'm legal, I don't care. So
yeah,
I walked back in there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to take my saddle and get in a tree back here. When I say there wasn't a tree within like 300 yards, there was not a tree within 300 yards, like even remotely close. All the trees were on private. All the ag was on private. I basically had a hay meadow. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to make this work? So I walked in and there was a cluster of rocks, like 3 rocks that were kind of sitting on top of each other. Like, and I don't mean rocks, like boulders, like actual big boulders, and a telephone pole. So I was like, okay, this is the only option. Do I want to sit 300 yards back and basically just watch some nice deer walk down the fence, or do I want to be in the chips? I decided I wanted to be in the chips. So I posted up behind that rock, set my camera up and everything, and the rock and the telephone pole. And what do you know? Like 30 minutes before dark, a doe and a fawn come over, and I'm like, all right, this is my test. This is my test that they're going to see me. The doe and the fawn jump the fence. And I mean, first thing, they're like locked on me on the ground. I'm like, oh no. And I got my bow in my hand because I'm like, dude, I'll pop a doe. I'm on the ground. This is going to be so sick.
I'll pop a fawn.
Yeah. Well, Kansas, dude, they're like 90 pounds anyway, so you might as well.
That's true.
I've been using the new Exodus Rival cell camera for the last couple months, and I have found a beautiful mainframe 8-point with tons of stickers to go after this fall.
Ooh.
One thing I do appreciate about Exodus trail cameras is all of the cameras share the same data plan, so you only pay for what you need. A lot of cell cam companies charge you for HD pictures. I've seen prices of $5 for 50 HD pics. Exodus is going to give you unlimited HD pictures right to your phone, which is awesome when you're sitting there in the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees and you just want to binge a bunch of trail cam photos.
If you're looking for a solid cell camera with great performance and a 5-year no BS warranty, go check them out. So as we all know, hunting deer is something people can make way too complicated. Arrows can be the exact same way. Instead of going down all those rabbit holes trying to sift through the endless information that's online and you're not really sure if it's right or wrong, Exodus makes it simple to get the right arrow for your exact setup.
So go online to the Exodus Arrow Builder. It takes less than a minute. You're going to enter your draw weight, your draw length, and how heavy of a point you're shooting. And it's going to be that simple. Let the guys at Exodus take care of the rest.
So if you're interested in Exodus Rival cell cameras or a new set of their MMT arrows, just go to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and use code HA15 for 15% off anything on the website.
Once again, that is ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Use code HA15 at checkout for 15% off. Now let's get back to the podcast. No, like a full-size doe here, but I'm sitting on the ground and they do that kind of like side eye and they circle the entire way around me. And the whole time I'm like, dude, I could pop you. Like I'm holding my bow, like I could pop you so hard. And they circle behind me and win me and bust. And I'm like, all right, it worked though. That's a successful sit. Like they saw me, but they didn't, obviously didn't see me that good because if they would have saw me great, they would have busted immediately. They walked the whole way around me at like 25 yards, busted me with the wind. That's fine. So I was like, okay, I think this will work if a buck walks by. So like 15 minutes before dark, a nice buck walks by the fence and another buck's trailing him. And one of them is like 130 inches. One of them's like a dink, and then one of them's like probably 120s, 130s. And I stop. They're like on the edge of the fence, and I'm bup, and they're like, "What?" Because I'm only like 30 yards away. Like, what the frick was that? And they both stop and they look, and they take another step, and I hit them again with a grunt. They'd stop and look like, "What?" And then we did that several times, and they walked into the timber, and I was like, "Frick, dude! Like that sucks." I was in there for that 160, and I never saw him. I'm sure he was on the field somewhere, probably, but
you just didn't carry the 0 on that deer.
Yeah, the 16. Yeah. Well, so we got. I'm sitting in there, and it's like right at last light, and I hear. On the private, and I'm like, oh, F that. And so I hit with my mouth. And he hits me back, and I'm like, and we kind of do that a couple times. And I'm like, all right, sick. So I sit there, and then he like immediately, I just see a figure like circling downwind of me, and I'm like, not this time, motherfucker. Like, you're not gonna circle me like those does. And so I pop up from behind the rock, and I see him stop. He's like, what? Like there's someone. I like popped up like a dooney, like a gopher out of a hole, and I draw back, and he's sitting there at 25 yards, and I can tell it's a buck, and he's quartering hard to me. So I put it right on his shoulder, shoot him, go coast to coast, right in the middle of the shoulder, came out the back. Is that right, Carol? When we recovered him, was that what it was? Coast to coast shoulder, the back hip.
Yeah, almost all the way through. It may have went all the way through.
No, yeah, it did because I found my arrow immediately. So I found my arrow, and it looked like liver, like it was dark red blood. But I remember we went back to the house. I wasn't sure which buck it was. I knew it probably wasn't the big one, but you guys were giving me so much grief. Like, did you shoot a giant and you're not telling us? Did you shoot a giant? You wanted me to go look for it that night, Jake.
Well, yeah, because I had to go home that night as well. And I was like, listen, if it's the big one, like, we can either go look for it now, or I might stay. If you for sure know it was like a 160 or something, yeah, I would have stayed. But
well, and I knew it wasn't the 160. Like I was pretty sure. You know, I saw a frame and a big body. They're big bodied up there, dude. Like a 3-year-old is a big bodied deer up there. So I was like, isn't that what I said? I was like, he had
could be deceiving.
Body.
Yeah,
yeah. I said he had a big body and a decent rack, and so that looked good. I called a dog tracker that night because I was like, dude, we're so close to. The only reason I didn't want to track him that night was because I just didn't want to bump him on a private, because then I'm like, okay, I'm in a terrible situation if I bump him on a private, because now I got to go ask for permission, and they're obviously hunters. So they're probably not going to let me even go look for him. So we didn't. We got a dog, went back the next day. The deer went like 60 yards and ended up being, I guess he went a yard for every inch that he was, because he was like probably 60 inches. But I didn't care. One, because we were getting our cheeks beat in by Kansas. And then two, being able to shoot a deer like that on the ground behind a rock and a telephone pole, that gave me confidence to where I'm like, if I can shoot one behind a rock and a telephone pole, by God, I can go sit in the field edge and shoot one, or sit in the timber. So that made me, last year made me have like less respect for a deer's eyes. And I think we'll see if that pays off in the future. But that was just one situation where I learned you can definitely kill a deer on the ground. Would a mature buck come and do that same thing? I don't know. Maybe not, but it worked for me.
You'll find out one day.
I hope to find out one day. I'd do it again. I go sit behind
Yeah.
that same rock again and shoot one, or at least I try. It was fun, and I feel like actually shooting one on the ground. Once you do shoot one on the ground, it seems like you want to do it again, or you have confidence to do it again. Because I remember when Jake Ayers shot one on the ground. I just saw him ground hunting all the time after that. I'm like, why? He's like, because you can do it. Like you can do it. Like, why would I carry in a tree stand in an ideal spot, have to saw limbs, which you can't even do on public land, and do all this stuff? If duty calls for the ground, duty calls for the ground, and
It would be a lot more freeing, I guess. Think about
it's
it.
fun, dude. Imagine putting your bag on and your bow, and you're like, I'm going hunting. That's fun.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a few times I've tried to do it, like it's never worked out. That ground hunting that wasn't in a blind, and so it's like one of those ordeals.
I don't think it's right for every situation. I really don't. I
Mm-mm.
think there's actually very few situations that it's right for. I really do. Like, if you can get in a tree, why would you not get in a tree? I think that's just laziness at that point. If you're like, no, I want to sit on the ground. No, you don't want to put up a tree stand.
Unless like you're just bound determined to get one in a tree, like on the ground.
Right.
That's if it's goal oriented or something. Yeah. Other than that, man, like I don't know. I don't have any stories or don't know much about like good tactics or anything, or like when you should use them or not. Like I think the only thing I would say about ground hunting is like use it when there's no other option.
100%. If you have a desire to do it, or use it when there's no other option. Because there's no doubt that you're putting yourself in their line of sight. You're kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball, but that's kind of what makes it fun too. It's the same thing with a bow. When you pick up a bow, you're putting yourself behind
That's
the 8
true.
ball. Like rifles, it's a
I
lot
thought
easier
we
to
just did it because we got to hunt more.
That's why I do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot
when
easier
rifle
to-
season comes around, I'm like, hello, old friend. $3 a bullet.
Yeah. I can tell you it's a lot easier to sit back on a pond dam, 150 yards, and you can move around a lot during that situation.
Yeah, like, what's going on 150 yards away from me? Like, I know I'm not in any immediate danger. Oh, damn.
Exactly. Carol, do you have any aspirations of sitting on the ground?
Not unless I have to. Absolutely not.
Not unless he's sleeping.
Yeah, not unless I'm.
Dude,
sleeping.
you're the
That's
most
not-
experienced ground hunter in our group.
He's
Don't
putting
even-
hours on the ground, son.
Don't even. You act like I slept that one morning. I was so mad because I didn't have my platform. I was like, I don't really know what to do. So I went up, I was only like 150 yards off the road. And I was in grass that was just as tall as I was. I was like, well, this is where I decided to hunt. And so I was like, no confidence. I slept that one morning.
Can you imagine a deer walking up and stepping on you, like, ah, in that grass?
Dude, the deer had to be within 10 yards for me to even see it. That was one of those hunts where I was like, I'm over this. I just hope somebody else shoots one. That was the same morning that Justin got his big one. So
I didn't have your platform at that point.
I didn't have my platform, or I didn't have my sticks or my platform or something, because that was why I was sitting on the ground where I was like, I don't remember when it was, but I didn't have something, or I wouldn't have sat on the ground.
You sure you just didn't want to sleep?
If
I
I
think
wanted
that's
to
it,
sleep,
Carol.
I would have just said,
I think
Good
that's
luck.
it.
I'll see you guys when you get back.
You know what's bad is when Carol does want to sleep, when he sleeps in his truck, he can just lock the doors and be like, "Quick, leave me alone."
Yeah. You knock on the door. He's like, no. Tell me what you see.
I've told that on the podcast so many times. When you wake up at like 7:30 and you're rested and you're like, "Seen anything?" I'm like, "You don't get to know." You don't get to know.
And everyone comes back empty-handed. I'm like, I'm sure I wouldn't have seen anything.
And then you're like, "What are we doing for breakfast?" You're all
You should have it
well-rested.
made.
Yeah, you guys act like I slept all week. I still got my butt up a few mornings and hunted.
You pulled it out in Kansas, so nobody can say too much.
That's true. I don't know why we were hunting Oklahoma public land when we should have been in Kansas, but I said it too. I was like, we need to go to Kansas before we go to Oklahoma, because we will be so burnt out and we will be hunting our better land in the second half of this. And that's what happened.
I think, like, in all transparency, I think and everybody did this. I think if we were there 6 nights, I think we hunted maybe 4 mornings, maybe. Or I'm sorry, we slept in 4 mornings.
There was it was storming really bad when we were there though too.
There's that, but there's a lot of times I woke up and I was like, thank God that I hear rain. Like I wasn't going regardless.
I think the only
That
time
week
we
was
slept
tough.
in Kansas, Christian, was the day that Jake got there, or the morning after when we stayed in the hotel, and we were like, no.
No, we slept. There was a couple times at Jake's house that we did.
Yeah, I was
too.
about to say I remember more mornings than not us sleeping in there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Me and Carol killed what 167 inches of 2 deer. I mean, it was 2 deer, but we did kill a 160.
Well, I can't say anything. I added 0 to that. So,
dude, when I posted my buck that I shot on the ground in the Kansas forum, they're like, because I was asking for a tracker, and then they're like, "Did y'all find it?" And I posted a picture in there, and they were like, "The exact reason non-residents should not be."
I know.
It probably didn't help the dog tracker post.
Man, I wanted to get in there. I'm sorry for any Kansas people, but we ran into so many freaking numbnuts walking around and just ruining hunts and stuff. It's like, well, this is why we have to shoot these deer, is because you numbnuts do stupid stuff. Like I'm gonna walk around with a crossbow in the bedding.
Suck it, losers. You don't get to use trail cameras anymore.
Yeah.
Who do you think put that on the ballot?
Me. I voted.
Yeah. It's like, well, we have to shoot deer when we have people like you. So,
well, they wouldn't have had that opportunity if I would have not been an idiot, because I would have shot that 120 in October and it would have been over.
Preach, brother. Yeah.
Well, so I would do an entire separate episode on this, but this episode is going to come out literally like first week of October, probably. So when this comes out, it will be, let me make sure. It'll be October 6th. On October 6th, when this comes out, how many deer? I know, but do you think there'll be a deer between us 3 dead?
Carol?
Yeah, I know that Christian and I are going to get one. It's just up to Dave up there.
You think we're both getting one opening day?
Probably.
Y'all got a good lease. That's all I'm saying.
You could have been on it too, though.
I know, but then we'd have had to do a coin flip for Mr. next year, and then that'd be a hard deer to pass.
Well, Carol will show you how to pass him. I know. This is my prediction. This is my prediction. Carol's going to shoot a nice buck opening morning, and then another one's going to come in, and he's going to be texting me, "Dude, I'll buy your half of the lease. There's another deal out there."
Please, God, let me be done. I don't want to do this all year, please.
You want to talk about changes? I don't see me doing anything opening week.
Like, you're not gonna go hunt?
No. I am. It's just like slinging an arrow. Probably not. The way it's looking now.
No does, no nothing.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I
don't like shooting does, dude. Like I do, but I don't, because it's like, oh, there could be the one I'm after peering from the tree line about to come out, and all of a sudden it sees Becky get absolutely stroked, and it's like, I want to go to the neighbors.
It's fun. I mean, yeah, I get it on the private and stuff, but on public, dude, I will absolutely lay a doe down. No problem. I think if I had to give a prediction, I think Carol's going to shoot a buck opening weekend.
Man,
I think that's my prediction. I think I might have I may not have an opportunity, but I think Carol's definitely going to get a shot at one. It'll be if he's going to pass it or shoot. We got one mature buck in there that is in there like chin hair. That dude lives like I'm pretty convinced he lives like 10 yards from the feeder, because he's in there every morning, every evening. Seems like.
Is that Mr. next? The big 8. I think I know which one you're talking about.
Short threes. That guy.
Yes.
Horrendous threes. It kills me. It hurts my heart so badly.
Well, you could hurt his heart on October 1st.
I could. I'm fairly confident that I could, but we've just got some brutes in there that I'm going to see if they come around first.
Well, tell me this. Are y'all going to shoot does?
At some
If I shoot a buck, I will. Yeah.
Yeah,
some point.
but that's what I mean. Like it's on private. It's really hard to like try to shoot a doe because like
I've got a
you
certain
want
stand
to.
location. I have a stand location that bucks don't hit that I will shoot does at. Yeah. It's on the north end of it's on a different, 500 yards away. I would shoot does on that stand for sure. I'm with you though. Like if there's bucks coming into a place, no, I'm not going to shoot a doe. But
see, that's my issue. Could I shoot a doe? Yes, but will I? No.
not that early. Will you shoot a doe, Carol, after you shoot your buck?
After you're out of there as well. Yeah. But
Yeah.
we already talked about it. I'm no screwing it up for the other person because we can shoot a doe we have 10 to choose from in the morning and the evening. So they're not going anywhere. So just wait till we're done.
Dude, on my other lease, there's one picture. There's like 8 does in one photo. I'm like, this is gonna be a problem. I'm gonna need to thin 4 of these out. If I shoot a buck on opening weekend and then does come in, I'm going to keep shooting the does until I'm out of arrows.
Whenever you're talking about a whole bunch of does in one picture, that made me think of all the raccoons I have eating all my corn and stuff. And what we talked about doing is like just going out there with that little mini crossbow and just picking off all the raccoons. With
That'd be so awesome.
Our lease is full of them. I mean, the first October, what I hunt, like 6th or 7th last year on the lease, I walked in and every tree that I looked at, I would just see because there's not a lot of tall trees.
They're like elm trees.
Yeah, they're all short trees. And every single tree I looked at, I would just see a coon, and then I would see another coon peek out. And I'm like, I saw 20 coons just walking into the tree stand. I was like, we probably should do something about this at some point. But
dude, we see them. So we have these like little baskets around the feeder head so they don't spin it and get corn. They hang on them one arm and they throw their other arm in to try to grab.
They're relentless too, man. They're so relentless. Yeah.
Yours is a lot higher too. So if they fall, it's a pretty good little drop.
Dude, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. We have a step up ladder one and it's like 6 foot, 7 foot off the ground, and they'll climb all the way to the top and then jump down on that thing and then try to.
Dude, we get so many photos of them just hanging on with one arm, and it's like, gosh dang, what are y'all doing?
Yeah. Well, dude, by the time this goes out, it's going to be deer season. It's September 24th now, but I'm excited. I think it's going to be a really good year. I really do.
I'm dialed in. I am dialed in. I walked out, it shot probably with 20 arrows, and I was like, all right, my target is done for pretty much. So I put a leaf and a stick in there, held the leaf up with a stick. I was like, all right, I shoot until I shoot until I hit the leaf. Because my arrow is starting to go through my target, and first shot hit the stick holding in the leaf. And I was like, I can walk back inside with confidence now.
I'm ready for hunting season. May the odds forever be in y'all's favor. And everybody.
What do you mean ready for hunting season? It will be hunting season when this comes out.
I know. And I hope that there's like 3-4 bucks down by the time people listen to this. Probably not, but I hope so. Anywho, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're going to be doing one more episode of the How to Hunt Bucks on Public Land, or How to Hunt Public Bucks series. And episode 5 is just kind of a general strategies, ethics, stories kind of episode. So most of the meat and potatoes are done, but I kind of want to keep the last one lighthearted. So we're going to be doing that in the next episode. That'll be number 5 and the finality of the series. So thanks for sticking around with us. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Jesus loves you.
Thank you guys so much for checking out the Hunter's Advantage podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to the podcast. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.